From the Allen Media Worldwide Headquarters Studios high atop 2 Turtle Creek Tower, this is Deconstructing Dallas. Greetings, everyone. Ryan Trimble here again, back in the Allen Media Worldwide Headquarters Studios, joined today by the Road Warrior himself, Shawn Williams. Shawn.
What's up, Ryan, man? It is good to be back in town after moving around a little bit for the job.
That's right. You have been, you left the friendly confines of our great city, and you have been traveling a little bit.
Yeah, as you know, Texas A&M University is one of our clients. We have been working on their guest room donation program at the new Texas A&M Hotel and Conference Center that will be opening on August 29th. And so we went down and worked the coaches' nights. And so all of the A&M clubs, or definitely the big A&M clubs around the state, will have a coaches' night where the head football coach will come in and talk shop a little bit. And also, it's a big fundraiser as well for scholarships. So I went down last Sunday for the Monday night coaches' night in Houston, came back for the Tuesday night coaches' night in Fort Worth, and capped it off at Gilley's for the coaches' night here in Dallas.
I love that. Oh, save the best for last, right? Right here in Dallas.
It was the best for sure of the 3 that I went to, and obviously I'm biased. But Houston was cool. The Houston A&M Club does a great job. Their event is at NRG Stadium, but it's like the convention facility that's right next to the stadium. So that's cool. It's a little bit more formal. They have a plate of dinner there. And then in Fort Worth, we were at Billy Bob's, which was fun.
Always fun.
And then we were in Dallas. All 3, the energy was a little bit better because I think people are more excited about Coach Fisher. They went from about 600. These numbers are kind of hearsay. But they went from about 600 in Houston last year to about 900 from what I heard. They doubled the number of folks in Fort Worth. I mean, there was a line wrapped around the whole building pretty much to get in. And then the last I heard, they were close to 1,800 in Dallas. And then Jennifer, one of our owners, was in San Antonio last night for coaches' night there. Aaron, our colleague Aaron Ragsdale, and I were sitting having our barbecue in an auxiliary room, and in walks on Thursday in Gilley's right past us was Coach Fisher, and he was going up to speak, and I said,
"Did he sit down and have a brisket sandwich with you?"
He was in a hurry. He was in a hurry. I offered, but he didn't have time for that. And I just said, good luck, Coach.
I mean, since you guys had just shared a plate of dinner, in Houston, it was, you
might as well, right? But so, I mean, Coach Fisher talks fast. so you have to really be listening while he's giving his speech, his ball speech. But I think there are some excited Aggies right now.
Well, Shawn, that's really exciting. And in other sports news, we get another year of the great Dirk Nowitzki.
21 years with one team, with our Dallas Mavericks, Dirk Nowitzki. That is an amazing accomplishment. And I think I'm down. I think he averaged 12.5 points last year. Whatever. It's all good.
Yeah, I don't care. As I've said before, put the statue up. Just go ahead and start laying the foundation for that thing,
Yeah, I'm down. I'm looking forward to it. And, Dirk still has game. I am interested to see whether or not he will start this year.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at how it is kind of laying out with Luka Doncic and Dennis Smith Jr., Harrison Barnes, I mean, where does Dirk fit in with Wesley Matthews Jr.? I think it's between those two, whether or not Wesley Matthews Jr. or Dirk is actually a starter or the other one is pushing for 6th man of the year. Well,
Shawn, one of your friends will not be back on the Mavs roster this year.
Yeah, I hate to see Yogi Ferrell leaving. I actually got to meet his dad through our work with Dallas County Promise. And so they were, I know at one point, really looking to become part of the community. Looks like from reports that there was a deal that was signed between the Mavericks and Yogi took a little time and thought he'd take his talents to Sacramento.
Well, hey, it is the league, and he's got to do what's in his best interest, I guess. So if it's the Sad Sack Kings, then best of luck to you, man.
Well, Yogi, we barely knew you, but you were fun here in Dallas. It was a really cool story when he came off a 10-day contract and signed a 2-year deal. So, to his dad, Kevin, and to Yogi, congratulations, and definitely try to catch you guys coming through Dallas. But today we are talking to Bob LaPrelle, the president and CEO of the Museum of the American Railroad. and it is a really fun conversation.
This guy loves trains, Shawn. Let's start there. He knows more about trains than anybody I've ever seen. It's exciting. You can tell his passion right from the moment, you would get into the interview here. And it's really exciting. And I think, we get into this a little bit more later in the interview. But one of the reasons Dallas is where Dallas is and why Dallas is here and why it's the hub or ground zero for North Central Texas is because of trains, Shawn.
Yeah, and Bob's a historian of transportation. He's a historian of Dallas history, and that story that you allude to that we'll hear more about later is really fascinating to think that, the railroads and the railway is why we're here and not, 30 miles north or 30 miles south, because it could be.
That's right. And don't think that I'd never slip that into any talking points ever during, in any branch talking points.
I'm sure you have.
Of reading the bills.
I'm sure you have. And the importance of transportation. I mean,
that's right.
I think a lot of us who have been here, which I've been here now a little bit more than 20 years. You think about the impact that Dallas-Fort Worth Airport has made. You can think about that. You can see that on our region. But based on what we talk about with Bob, that impact goes all the way back to the railroad. So it's really exciting, and I'm excited for our listeners to get to hear about this.
Yeah, well, let's dive right in. We'll take a quick break. Thanks for tuning in. Deconstructing Dallas, Ryan Trimble, Shawn Williams. See you right after this short break.
Texas A&M is just weeks away from opening the new on-campus, full-service, world-class Doug Pitcock 49 Texas A&M Hotel and Conference Center. Your tax-deductible donation to the hotel comes with a guest room option that gives donors exclusive reduced room rates for all home football game weekends, a dedicated concierge to help with reservations and trip planning, and access to valet parking. Lock in your donation and room today by calling 979-429-2153. That's 979-429-2153. Or go to tamuhcc.com.
Welcome back. This is Deconstructing Dallas. Shawn Williams, Ryan Trimble. We are very, very honored today to have as a guest on our show, on our podcast, Bob LaPrelle. He is the president and CEO of the Museum of the American Railroad, which is located in Frisco, Texas. Bob, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Doing great. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I wanted to jump in with you because not only do you have a great knowledge of railroad history, transportation history, you have a really good knowledge of Dallas history. I know many of our listeners will probably know that the museum was in Fair Park for a long time, but can you talk about just your overall, which I've read about you, your fascination with transportation history?
Well, I've always been amazed with moving people and goods and the type of objects that we've created to do that. And that ranges from certainly railways, and it also extends into steamships and aircraft and everything else. I'm fascinated with the technology behind it, the changing technology, and what it has, the change in our society and how it's changed our culture.
So you talk about the technology, and I've also read that you talked about how it's relevant today. Rail transportation specifically is relevant today. And, I see trains. I live in Oak Cliff, so kind of coming through Commerce, that corridor pretty often. But at the same time, not like it was when I was a kid and you'd have to stop every 10 minutes, it seemed like, at a railroad crossing. So how has rail transportation changed for the way it is today?
Well, the railroad industry has really evolved with commerce and in the politics of this country. It built the nation, particularly west of the Mississippi. The railroads are inseparable from the history of the United States. I mean, they really caused this country to expand and flourish. And a lot of people think that that's all part of the history books now and that railroads are not relevant anymore, but they really are. I mean, they're moving more materials now than ever in their history, maybe with the exception of World War II. And they're moving a lot of bulk commodities now, aggregates and coal and large materials, as well as sensitive items. What's really interesting today, besides just the strong health of freight railroads, is the resurgence in passenger rail, intercity rail like Amtrak, and commuter lines like the TRA between Dallas and Fort Worth, as well as, light rail systems in urban areas like DART. Fort Worth is expanding their passenger rail system. We're actually coming back to that as an efficient mode to move people, and, it's the cleanest, safest, most efficient way to get people around.
Bob, one of my favorite stories from my time, working in and around the legislature was the story of how Dallas became Dallas, and it is all thanks in part to one Representative John Lane and his, what do I call it? Do we call it a ruse, perhaps, or do we call it just smart legislating? But tell us a little bit, expand upon your earlier comments about Browder Springs and John Lane's legislation.
Well, when the Houston and Texas Central line built through Dallas in 1872, that was enough to really cause the city to flourish. But what really put us on the glide path to economic prosperity was when a year later, the Texas and Pacific line crossed from east to west. And yes, that was because of some very skillful political maneuvering down in Austin, that the two rail lines, the junction of two major rail lines, the first ones would be at Browder Springs. Well, nobody knew where Browder Springs was, so he kind of took all the politics out of it, They didn't care or they didn't know. So all of a sudden, they find out that the Browder Springs is less than a mile from the central business district of Dallas.
Right.
So,
brilliant.
It was absolutely brilliant. The line built through here. It got on the other side of the Trinity and then ran out of money because of an economic depression at that time. So to get it to Fort Worth, they were literally helping to build the line to Fort Worth and get it on the rest of the way. But it got to Dallas, and that really put us on the map.
I've also wondered kind of what did Union Station mean in the history of the rail? Because, I go there and it's such a grand building, and even still today, it's a relevant transportation hub. But historically, what has that meant for us?
Well, Union Station was a real turning point, not only in the history of railroads in Dallas, but the history of Dallas in general. That facility was created out of necessity. By the turn of the century, we had 7 or 8 different rail lines coming in, going from this city. We had 6 train stations, 6 passenger stations, and the very source of our prosperity was beginning to choke the city. So as part of the Kessler Plan for Dallas, which was a master plan about 1913, they recommended that they consolidate all these rail lines, consolidate the stations, and build a Union Station where everybody moved into one building. And as part of that, they built one rail line around the city and got all the lines out of the central business district and covered, they were stopping up streets and everything else. So Union Station was really an answer to a growing, bustling city to address the rail problem and continue growth.
Again, this is Sean Williams, Ryan Trimble. We are with Bob LaPrelle, President and CEO of the Museum of the American Railroad. Moving forward, we are all looking, I know I can personally say that I am looking forward to high-speed rail and, being a place that we can use. I love to be able to get up, go to work, get on the high-speed rail to Houston, watch a Mavericks and Houston Rockets game and come back the same night. I mean, that's like my vision. But what do you see as the future as it relates to high-speed rail, not only in Texas, but across the United States?
Well, I think high-speed rail has a bright future in this country in general. But in Texas, I think you really will see that line constructed and go into service. This is a perfect market to introduce that form of transportation here in the States. You're talking about going between 2 major city pairs. There's a lot of congestion on the highways. There's congestion in the air. And I think there's room for that as an alternative mode of transportation. And what a great thing it would be to go from city center to city center in such a short period of time and not have to deal with traffic to the airports and security and everything else.
So I also saw that, one of the things that got you into rail and railroads and trains is an early experience that you had on a train. Could you talk a little bit about that too, as far as your memories of your early train riding?
Sure. Well, one of the things that my parents indulged me in was riding passenger trains in the late 1960s. And when my older brother and sister got too old to take the big family vacations and I was the youngest, they indulged me and they took me on a trip on the Santa Fe Railway's Texas Chief, between Fort Worth and Chicago. This was in 1969. We went first class. We went in the sleeping cars. We ate in the dining car, and we went into the great Dearborn Station in Chicago, right there on the edge of Lake Michigan, and that just had a lasting impression on me. And that type of travel, the romance and the grandeur of traveling like that just stuck with me. So who would have ever thought that all these years later I would be running a museum and be able to share that with other people, which is it's a gift. I love going to work every day. It has its moments because we're a nonprofit, but it has been a great experience.
And, for someone like me, I also